What's going on, everybody? Welcome here to the Jam Play Live. My name is Maneli Jamal. I'm here with my wonderful guitars. I'm going to be playing through a couple guitars of mine throughout this next hour or so, having some coffee. So hopefully you've got your coffee in hand and are enjoying your beverage while I try to entertain you a little bit with some of my songs, some stories, and also some questions you might have. So I think the format that we're doing today is going to be, I play a song. If you've got any questions on that song at the very end of the song, after the song, I'll do my best to accommodate and answer any questions that you guys might have about that song or that technique, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be music related, to be honest. So I want to start out with a bit of a peaceful song that I thought might be appropriate right now, just with where we are right now, because I think most of you are probably at home, like I am. And it's been a lot of fun, actually, to be at home because of this lockdown and this isolation, because it forces you to play a lot more than maybe you're used to. So I want to play a love song. I want to start with a beautiful love song here. So if you are sitting next to someone, please hold their hand as I play this piece. But only if you know them. Don't hold a stranger's hand if you're in a coffee shop right now. But this is a song dedicated to a special time of my life, which is when I was in Austin, Texas. I used to live in Austin, Texas. I'm now in Canada, in Toronto. But in Austin, Texas, I fell in love there. And this was the song that was born from that experience. It's called Southern Magnolia. And that's a beautiful flower that grows down there in Texas. All right, that was a bit of a Southern Magnolia for you, which was actually, if you can believe it as well, it's actually one of the first songs that I wrote with fingerstyle, with this fingerstyle approach, and it's a lot of fun, and thankfully I still remember every bit of it. And it's definitely one of those songs that started out as a very basic idea and then it kind of evolved throughout the years. Because basically, you know, as many of you guitarists know, you gather information with each kind of lesson that you kind of go through or life lesson, and you apply that knowledge to maybe previous works. And it's an amazing thing that can happen when you revisit some of those. And it's like, whoa, all of a sudden you have new knowledge that you can apply and make the song even better. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions now that Jeff here at Jam Play is just providing me. So I'm going to answer the easy question first, which is what tuning I am in. I'm in standard tuning right now, E, A, D, G, B, E, capo on the 2nd fret. So if you want to play along, you know, you're more than welcome to do that. But yeah, so standard tuning is definitely one of my favorite tunings, simply because there's just so much you can do with it. I know that when you're starting out and maybe you kind of want to go for a specific sound, it's very easy to go into these you know, DAD-GAD tunings, open C, open G tunings. The only problem I have with that really is like when you start venturing out into these different tunings, you're not really understanding maybe the theory that's involved with the guitar, which is actually going to make you a better player. And not even only a better player, but being able to understand what you're doing more clearly. And that's something that my dad taught me. My dad's a violinist, so he really taught me the importance of understanding what you're doing, because if you do, you can express yourself quicker, right, and more accurately. That's a very important lesson that my dad taught me. He was a great violin player. Second question here is, how much of an influence is classical guitar on your playing? It feels like there's a lot of classical technique present, but I'm not sure if it is classical itself. What a great question. And that's actually a question that I get asked quite a bit, because, especially in this song, because this is one of the first songs that I wrote with fingerstyle. And before fingerstyle, I kind of did play a little bit of classical guitar, which is kind of where that triplet feel that you heard came from. If you know that song Asturias, which is a very famous Spanish song. Right, you've probably heard that. It's a really beautiful classical song that I'm not doing it justice, but it's one of those things that it really requires certain dexterity with the right hand. So I definitely have been influenced by classical technique, not so much classical players. Now, I am a self-taught guitar player, so I basically just love to watch what other people are doing and try to imitate that myself and to apply those.
Hello friends, it looks like we have a little bit of a timeout situation here. It looks like Maneli's audio and video is timed out for just a moment.
One of the most beautiful things about kind of seeing someone do something that you haven't done before, I know it still happens for me all the time when I see a great guitar player do something that I'm just in complete shock and awe that I I like have to immediately go to the guitar and try to mess around with that, which is a lot of fun. And that's definitely one way to really explore this idea of your external senses, right? Gathering what's around you and trying to make that into the guitar. But as far as definitely just, I feel like if you want to be a really good all-around player, you should understand a little bit of the classical technique. It's only going to make you a better player. It's going to make you cleaner as well. Like as I was saying with that triplet feel, that kind of tremolo, which is just thumb, index, middle thing that I was doing like this, it's one of those things that, like, if you really slow it down, it doesn't really sound that exciting. But it's one of those things, it can really make it a lot more musical by using this classical technique, maybe even with playing it very soft at first, and then slowly start to build the volume, right? That already makes it sound more musical, especially when you're playing a certain melody. Right, so these classical techniques that I'm using here, which is, obviously slowing things down, dynamics, so these are all different kind of languages of music that we can use to express ourselves more clearly. Hopefully that answers your question with the classical thing. Throughout this hour, you're going to see me do a lot of different techniques and different genres as well. I don't like to be kind of locked into one genre. I consider myself more of a world fingerstyle player as opposed to just traditional Western fingerstyle, like boom chick, which I'll probably do a boom chick song later, but yeah. So here's another question. Do you know how to play the Titanic theme song? I probably won't be doing too many covers today. I'm probably not the best person for that. I've just spent my entire life exploring my own music, to be honest, and kind of what my story has been and what my experience in life has been to translate that to the instrument. So that's kind of where I am at today. I'm not sure I'll be able to doing any covers. I've just spent my entire life just, kind of focusing on composition. So, cool. So I'm going to play the next song here now. And maybe I'll play one completely different from that, just so you guys can hear a little bit of a contrast. Not too long ago, I had the chance to go to Zimbabwe in Africa to play at a festival, a beautiful festival there. And it was a really cool experience because for me, as I mentioned, I'm a Canadian now. I'm a Canadian, and the Canadian government decides one artist to send out to this festival to represent Canada. And for some reason, they asked me to go to represent them, which was such a blessing, and I was so grateful for that because I came here as a refugee many years ago, 17, 18 years ago, and it's one of those things that I was so touched that Canada would ask someone who came here as a refugee to represent Canada. So I went to Zimbabwe, played, and I was so inspired by the people there, the great musicians, the artists, the dancers, the actors. It was just so much talent there that I had to go home and write a song about that. And you'll hear me talk about this a lot today. I'm going to be talking a lot about kind of these experiences and how these experiences have shaped these songs. So this song here is a blues song dedicated to that. It's called Zim Blues. All right, thank you. I can't hear you, so I can't tell if you're clapping or not, but thank you anyway. That was a lot of fun. So that was Zim Blues. Zim Blues for you, dedicated to the people of Zimbabwe. So it's really cool to see about 300 of you here logged in today in total, and it's very good for a 2:30 p.m. Eastern little show here. So I'm going to answer some more questions here. So if you're just joining us, the format is kind of I play a song and then I'll answer some of your questions after the song in case you have any quite specific questions towards that song or anything else. Okay, so question number one here is what do you mean by understanding what you are playing in terms of theory? Now, is this a question in relation to what I was talking about with the tuning? Okay, in regards to the to the earlier question, which question? Is it the tuning one or the Titanic song one? Tuning, I believe. Okay, cool. So yeah, in regards to the tuning question, I'll kind of dive into that just a little bit. If that is your question, if it's not, let us know and I'll change the answer right away. But regarding the tuning, why I choose to kind of stick with playing in standard tuning and understanding the theory behind it, and what I really mean by that is that if you can have an emotion in your head that you are trying to convey, say like I'm gonna do it incorrectly just so you can see. I'm gonna feel sadness, okay? Say I've got this idea of sadness in my head right now, an experience of sadness. Someone passed away, something like that. And if I play this chord that I'm about to play for you, you're gonna hear that it doesn't quite match up with that emotion, right? I mean, this is a bit of a happier sound, you know, and obviously that's probably not the right chord that you want. What I mean by that then is now this: if you're really thinking about this idea of sadness, do you have a vocabulary?
Whoopsie daisy. Looks like we lost Maneli again. As you guys all know, we're doing these live shows remotely. We're at the whims of the internet powers that be. Oh, and I just realized I didn't unmute myself. It looks like we lost feed. I'm going to tell Maneli here. We are obviously doing these shows remotely because of the terrible crisis.
Yes,
that's
across to the audience in the correct way, or in the most efficient way, I should say. Not the correct way, because there's no right or wrong way. It's just about being as efficient as possible to convey your emotions. So now let me explain that again. I'm going to think of sadness one more time, and I'm going to try to imagine and visualize a chord in my head that I think that might work. Let's try maybe this one. Okay, all of a sudden, this versus this, right? Pretty different. So what I mean by understanding your theory and the importance of that is really understanding what the chord voicings you're playing and what you're trying to say. Obviously, this is one chord. I think of one chord as one adjective to explain something. And obviously, throughout the song, you're going to have multiple chords or multiple chord voicings to express the full sentence, the full expression of what you're trying to say. So understanding theory is just a means for you to express yourself quicker and more accurately. That's all I mean by that regarding the whole theory thing, and why I believe standard tuning is a great tuning to be in for that. Because not only it's not a challenging tuning if you really take the time to explore it. And I think that the great thing about that, exploring this tuning in particular, if you're playing with someone else, it makes it a lot easier, right? You can kind of rely on some of your theory knowledge to quickly jump in, versus if you're in an alternate tuning, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, all right? So that's kind of what I mean by that. Hopefully that kind of demystifies that topic. I get asked that all the time about why theory is important and why we should use it. So hopefully that helps. Question 2, is it incorrect to use the pinky finger as an anchor? Again, there's no right or wrong way here. Personally, I don't use the pinky finger here as an anchor. I know that a lot of fingerstyle players typically tend to do this because this is an anchor point that keeps your hand kind of in position. Now, let me explain the cons about this first. First of all, the pinky finger and the ring finger, they're connected. There's some nerves here that are connected. So watch what happens when I move my pinky finger. As you can see, my ring finger is also moving involuntarily. Okay, so problem number one is if you keep this finger locked, you're not going to have as much range of motion with the ring finger. Now, of course, the pro is here. If you practice it enough, you could probably build the dexterity to have that move freely. But for me, I definitely haven't trained it. So when I move my pinky finger or my ring finger, my pinky finger especially, it's like it tends to move with it. So I'm always about range of motion and getting the most out of your finger. And I'm a big believer in a term called finger economy. You've probably heard of this before from other players or other teachers, which is kind of minimizing the energy that's required to have certain actions. So if you keep this pinky finger here and you're playing, already I can feel a bit of a pressure on my ring finger from I can't get that full motion. It's almost like numb, right? It's almost like I've been injected with some freezing in that finger and I can't move it as much. So what I do is, to alleviate that, I move the palm here, this side of the palm, and gently is resting here. If anything, it's even the wrist knuckle here that's on the outside of your pinky finger. This bone right here touches right here above the bridge here. And when I do this, here's another advantage of this, of course, which is palm muting. You can palm mute very easily, very quickly. Of course, if you got your pinky finger there, you can do that as well. It's a similar thing. I really believe, though, that if you've got your fingers kind of free and your anchor point lies in your wrist versus your finger, you're going to have more range of motion, more dexterity, more agility, more endurance. And when we're playing guitars, that's kind of the big thing, you know. Right here, I'm playing for an hour. And so if I were to do that with the pinky finger there, I would get fatigued pretty quickly. Okay, so that's just my personal opinion on why I believe kind of having the anchor point from the wrist is more important, is a little bit strategically more efficient. Okay, question number 3. How do you gain strength to make bar chords? And that's a great question that we all have to go through. You know, it's a troublesome area for a lot of us to kind of push that bar chord and how to do that. One thing I can say is this. Whenever you're playing a bar chord, okay, notice that like a lot of players will maybe play an A chord like this. They'll keep their thumb way up here and they'll kind of grapple the whole neck like this, okay? There's nothing wrong with doing this. It's just that the way that I teach, I always teach with the thumb always in the back of the neck. Let me show you what I mean. That's where it is. It's right in the center of the back of the neck, the thumbprint, pointing to the left, okay? Number 1, why do I teach it like this? To get students right away into fixing a bad habit. Because eventually we're gonna play bar chords and there's no way that you can play a bar chord with your thumb up here. Watch what happens to my hand. If you bring your thumb in, what happens is your hand kind of caves in like this. This is not what we want because again, we're causing more tension in the wrist and the fingers in muscles that we don't need to activate if we can alleviate just the thumb movement. So it's the wrist movement from this kind of shape grappling to a kind of curved motion. Okay, so that's number 1. And another thing, look at the pinky finger. Watch what happens if I play this bar chord here with the pinky finger maybe like this. Okay, when I move my thumb up, watch what happens to my pinky finger. Again, it caves in, it kind of goes in towards the hand. It's not going to work. Also, think about pressure. When you're using the pressure for the bar chord, notice the index finger and the thumb come together. Imagine there being a neck right there, a guitar neck, that you're just applying pressure. And what happens is this muscle right here, you can see that. I'm going to activate it just so you can see it. I don't know if you can tell, it's being activated right now. But this muscle is responsible for the mechanic of grappling or grabbing something or squeezing something. Okay, it's the same thing with the bar chord. If you can just focus on getting it to this bar, this index finger to thumb movement to engage this thumb muscle, you'll be set. Another thing, really quickly before I play another song, is this idea of when you're doing this, that you want to kind of apply just enough pressure. I see so many times students will push so hard that they can't move their elbow like this. They're squeezing so hard, this whole half of their body is like tense and they can't move it. And all of a sudden they're like Two-Face, you know, it's just like there's half of their face is just like stuck in one position and it can't move. So a way to alleviate that, again, think of the pressure of the hand. Don't flex, don't apply pressure from the arm. So if I'm playing this bar chord, notice I'm using a very light touch, and I can move my arm very freely, I can move my shoulder, whatever I want to do. I can do anything here with that movement. It all comes from the hand. Last thing, action. Is your action too high? Are the strings too high above from the neck? So you want to keep it as close as possible without getting buzzed. That's another big thing. A lot of kind of beginner entry guitars have very high action. So we want to minimize that. We want to lower that. I won't get into that right now, but that's definitely something that you could kind of get into and look up. Cool, okay. So are there any people here who know my music who want to hear a specific song maybe? I am open to taking requests if the tuning is close enough. If not, I'll just play something else. Okay, so maybe Maserati. Don't know that one. No. Okay, so I'm going to play a piece called Synchro Destiny. This is another kind of very sweet melodic piece that I believe I did a few lessons with Jam Play in the Jam Play course that I did with them. So I might as well play this one. So if you guys like it, you can head over there and get the course where I teach this song. So it goes like this. Synchro Destiny. Thank you so much for tuning in here. So, I'm going to answer some of your questions now. By the way, that was also in standard tuning. You'll probably notice that I'm using a lot of capo 2 here for a lot of these songs. I just find, I like the voicing, the tone of the guitar on this guitar on the 2nd fret. That's why I'm kind of using a lot of that 2nd fret, in case you're wondering. So, question number 1. Love your playing on your picking hand. Are you using nail extensions, or do you manage to keep long nails? I swear, every live stream I do, there's always someone asking about the nails, and which is all good. It's always so embarrassing for when non-guitar players hear me talk about my nails, because they really are worried for me. I don't blame them. But you see, so I have acrylic gels on them. So it's a layer of gel that's on top of my real nail. And you can tell, I'm going to give you a close-up. So in case you are ready for some long nail action, you can see that my nails are almost have reached its end cycle, right? So you can see it's really grown out because, well, I'm in Toronto and everything's closed. I can't go to the nail salon and embarrass myself. And I guarantee you, every time I get these done, I make sure I shout at the top of my lungs that I'm a guitar player. I'm here for 4 nails, that's all. And it's always really funny when I see the reactions of some of the older ladies that are there, wondering what the hell I'm doing there. So yeah, acrylic gel on them, so they're not fake nails, so it's still my real nail under it, and I do grow them out. As you can see, they're just kind of peeking out above the tip. Okay, so that's kind of the sweet spot for me and how I'm able to get kind of clarity with this. If I didn't use these nails, you'd probably be hearing a lot of kind of more bassier overtones, or tones rather, and it wouldn't be as kind of sharp or crystal clear. So this, in conjunction with the thumb pick that I have here, just a Dunlop large thumb pick that allows me to get really clean sound with the guitar. That's kind of my personal thing. But I will say, all of my Skype students or other students that I have here in Canada, every time I've gotten one of them to get these nails done, they have loved it and they have not turned back. So don't be afraid. If it's a matter of going to the nail salon to embarrass yourself versus getting really good nails that are going to create better tone, go with the nails. Embarrass yourself. It's worth it. So we got a question number 2. Do you ever get into a rut and feel your playing is stale or uncreative? If so, any advice on how to get out of that? Great questions here. So if I ever get into a rut, typically what I do is I don't play guitar. I get away from the guitar. A lot of people might want to do the opposite, that when they're into a rut, they do want to keep exploring, they want to keep hashing out ideas. If I'm not feeling like I need to come to the guitar to come up with an idea, I'm going to take a break for a day or 2 even sometimes. It's uncomfortable, but to be honest, that uncomfortable state of being away from your guitar, I guarantee you, will create inspiration, right? There's art being away from your art. Now, oftentimes, I believe that music is not just something that you go to play for a hobby, and while you're thinking about music while you're playing, that's it. It's not like that. For me, it's a lifestyle. Even when I'm not playing guitar, if I'm going out for a walk with my dogs or something, or if I'm on the subway, whatever it might be, I'm constantly thinking of ideas, conceptualizing ideas. Maybe not musically per se, but artistically, visually, right? Like a painting over here. I'm thinking more in abstract shapes or little ideas like that. And I try to imagine how I could take that knowledge and apply it to the instrument to better express myself for the listener. Right. Another thing that you could do if you're ever in a rut, another option, of course, is to, if you are going to take that route to just play while you're in a rut, I would say really play something that you've never played before. A good place to start, for me personally, which I've done before, is learn some jazz voicings. That really, there's been so many times where I've just felt like I didn't know what to play. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to learn some jazz voicings. You know, and then I was thinking, within this, a simple progression like this, how can I make music out of that? And it's an exercise, right? So in this point, right? So already there we've got a little bit of an idea of a melody, which is really cool. So learning new ways of playing is probably going to inspire you in ways that maybe you didn't see coming. And if you are in that rut, maybe you just need to learn something new or even take space. That's my, from my experience, what has worked. It doesn't mean that that's going to work for everybody, but that's just, my personal approach. So we got a question number 3. What is your approach while writing music? Do you write the melody first and then accompany it, or do you do it the other way around? So if I were to accompany myself first and then maybe write a melody on top. That's a really wonderful question. Again, I could talk for an hour about this topic, but I'm going to try to keep it a little bit shorter than that. Synchrodestiny, that song that I just played, there was a very clear chord progression in mind. I'm going to give you the example of 2 ways. One with the chord progression, one with writing a melody first. The chord progression first. I'm going to write, this is the chord progression for that Synchrodestiny song. As you can see, there is a very clear kind of chordal progression happening from B minor to the B with the A, with the G to the A, right, and so forth. And so the idea came from this, because what I was thinking is I wanted to build a song. I wanted to build it. And oftentimes you can do that with a chord progression like that. The first time that you play it, you play the progression without the melody, right? So think about that when you're like kind of organizing or arranging a piece. And what I do is the second time, if I were to do this, now if I were to go through that again and then now play with the melody, sounds way different, right? Sounds way different. So obviously it's one, being able to play 2 things at the same time, 2 sort of lines at the same time. Another thing to really work on here is the focus of making the melody always slightly louder than the rhythm section, okay? So this is a very important thing when you're arranging, when you're composing. And again, the way I always think about this stuff is, how do I reflect it back into my life? How does this approach relate to my actual lifestyle and how I approach problems in life? That's always a question for me on how I can do that, because I always kind of explore those ideas like that. Cool. Okay, so that's it for the questions for now, because I'm gonna kind of play a couple songs back to back, and let me actually go to a different guitar here. So, this guitar here now is a Taylor 814 CE limited edition. It's a really nice guitar. This is the first guitar I bought with my own money in 2005, I think. I was working at a bakery at a time. At a bakery for 3 years, saving up money, and I got this guitar. Such a blessing to still have this with me. So if you're wondering about the tuning right now, I'm going into an E flat tuning, an E flat major 7 tuning. I've got a lot of songs in this tuning. I'm going to start out with a piece that's dedicated to Austin, Texas, which I mentioned earlier, where I lived for 7 years. And you see, I was once taught some very wise words from a great man there in Texas. And he gave me these little words of wisdom here. There was one point when I asked him about practicing, and I remember telling him that practice makes perfect. I was trying to explain to him that the power of why I play guitar, and why I practice, and to try to get it perfect. And he corrected me right away. He says, "Maneli, no, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect." mind blown. Truer words could not be spoken. And I felt so inspired from those words that I was like, he's right. I need to practice things a little bit more carefully, a little bit with more intention, with more awareness. And so this song here was born out of that experience. It's called Running Fox Trail. Thank you. All right, that was Running Fox Trail, dedicated to my time in Texas. So, if you like what you're hearing, I do have a YouTube channel, Facebook channel, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. It's all under Maneli Jamal, M-A-N-E-L-I, Jamal. So if you guys like this stuff, I've got full versions, even fuller versions of these pieces. I am kind of condensing some of these songs over at those platforms. So I'd love to kind of hear from you, if you like what you're hearing here today, of course. So I want to play one more piece here before we take some more questions, I believe. And as you can see, I'm using a lot of partial capos. For those of you that are kind of looking at this, why am I not touching the first string here? It's because that's intentionally done to create this sort of open tuning here in E flat major 7. Now this next song here, which I'm going to play for you, is dedicated to my upbringing in Germany. I lived in Germany for 9 years. It's a long story, But when I was there, I was very fortunate to have two parents who are both artists and musicians. The paintings behind me here and there are both my dad's. And I remember growing up around that, having that form of music and art around me all the time. And I'm from Iran originally, so I'm Persian by blood. And I was always around Persian music. And my dad, being a violin player, always played traditional Persian music on the violin. It was very inspiring later on in my life to kind of look back at that memory to see if I could go back to that experience and try to recreate that with some music. And that's what I'm going to try to do here with this piece called Vasat and Zaire. It's a 4-part movement series. I'm just going to play movement 2 and movement 3 because we don't have too much time here. And there's a lot of different techniques, so it's very much so inspired by my Persian upbringing. There's a lot of 6/8, 9/8 time signatures, so make sure you kind of listen for that if you're looking to get that extra experience, I guess. trying to get the most out of this guitar. All right, so that was Vasat and Zaire. I do have some lessons on this song at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Maneli, where I talk a little bit more about the 9/8 finger picking patterns and some of the percussive style of this song. It's a lot of fun to play this. It's a very kind of heavy piece because it's a composed through piece, meaning that we have very little repetition throughout. So you have one shot, one chance to get it. And I do have tabs for all of my music available as well at my website at manelijamal.com. If you are tuning in and want to learn some of these pieces, I do have transcriptions and tabs of those. So I'm going to finish off here with 3 questions that you guys have asked me here. And the tuning that I was using on this guitar here, which I believe, I think was the question. The tuning here is E flat, G, D, G, B flat, E flat. It's kind of like an E flat major tuning. With this capo on, it makes it like a major 7. The other guitar that I was playing earlier is in the tuning of standard tuning, a very exotic standard tuning, E-A-D-G-B-E, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So the question here, another question here is, do you adjust the truss rod often? Let me see. So with this guitar, yes, because as you know, I'm living in Canada right now, in Toronto, so the season is changing right now, so that's why this is off and why I had to make an adjustment to this. Now, it's such a very detailed sort of question. So yeah, that's kind of why this truss rod is off. And it kind of looks nice. And this guitar is so crystal clean and like elegant that I thought this would give it a little bit of more character. So I have already played Southern Magnolia. There was a question there if I had already played it. Yeah, so I did already play that in the beginning. I think that was the first song I played. So if you are tuning in and you want to find that song, it's in the beginning. I also played Zim Blues earlier. I played Running Fox Trail and here Vasat and Zaire as well. So someone's asking about what is the advantage of a thumb pick versus a thumb nail? A couple things. The reason I use the thumb pick here is because you see I started out with metal playing and rock and roll and punk music, where the pick is an essential tool for those sorts of styles, especially when you're doing picking. And I was the lead guitar player for a few kind of punk rock, screamo, emo bands back in the day. So I was always doing these fast lines with a pick, like kind of El Di Meolo runs, really fast palm muted stuff. I was really into that stuff. And the reason I still use the thumb pick is because I didn't want to lose that technique. So the thumb pick allows me to still have very loud notes, being able to kind of play lead over them. Now, there's an advantage, of course, to not doing that. If you just use the thumb nail, you can probably get more dynamic range from the thumb, and it kind of, your position of the hand oftentimes changes too. As you know, with the thumb pick, I'm kind of have this motion, a wrist back a little bit, versus if I didn't have the thumb, I would have the wrist kind of down like this in a classical style. So. But you see, if you do this, if you're going to use your thumb here, have your thumb be the anchor point. Don't have the wrist be the anchor point. Have the thumb as the anchor point, because you can also very freely move over to different parts of the guitar to get different tonalities, different timbres, versus, much different sound. And so there's an advantage to that as well. So again, there's no right or wrong way. I've just been using this for so long that it's just become an extension of me. It's not necessary, though, even to learn my songs, and I've seen a lot of players learn my songs without even the thumb pick too, which has been really cool to see how they've taken the song and made it their own. Really beautiful. So what are the basic chords used in fingerstyle? If there So, you just got bullied for having guitar nails at school. I'm very sorry to hear that. Thankfully, I never had the nails in school, but it is always funny when I shake someone's hand, for the first time, and they don't know that I'm a guitar player. I try to keep it a secret for as long as possible. I see how far I can go before they ask me, like, why do you have nails on your back? I usually just give them the answer of, it's a really good nose picker. I can really dive deep inside. Kidding. So the real truth about these nails is really it's a good back scratcher. You see, it's no. So I kind of go through these little spiels with them, and until I actually tell them that I'm a guitar player, I need this to get my sound, my tone out of the guitar. So it's a lot of fun to mess with people. But yeah, if you're getting bullied, that's no good. Just poke them in the eye. You know, this is a really good strategy. They're really sharp, so they can really hurt someone. Don't do that. So, you want to know some of the basic chords using fingerstyle, if there are any. The basic chords are probably a good place to start, which is just open chords. We got, maybe the minor chords I'll go through, the E minor, the A minor, the D minor. So if you're doing some basic fingerstyle picking, even some patterns like this. These are really good chords to know because from here it allows other fingers to do other things. You know, if you wanted to do that same thing with some extended chords. So open chords are definitely the way to go with that I would say. Okay, so another question here, or a comment. You sound like a cross between Sergio Altamura, which I played with last year in Poland, and Alex DeGrassi, which I have not played with ever, but a great player. Obviously, you're your own musician, just making an observation. Very nice work. Thank you so much for that very nice comment. It's always cool that when you hear some of the guitar players and you're trying to understand what their influences are. And everyone has their own voice with the guitar. Obviously, the more that you play, the more your voice will be shaped. So we got time for one last question. And again, before this last question, if you want to hear my music, more of it, you can just search manelijamal.com, youtube.com/Maneli. I've got a lot of lessons, a lot of guitar-oriented topics that I talk about. I do a lot of live streams there as well. If you like that, go ahead and check that out before this last question here, which is, what does your general work ethic look like? How much time do you spend composing and practicing? A great question. Thanks for asking that. You see, right, well, let me kind of bring it down to when I was really playing guitar a lot, when I was really trying to hone the skill of the techniques. Back then, I was playing 5 to 8 hours a day. And I would kind of break it up into chunks with practicing songs, like the muscle of composing for 1 hour, the muscle of technique maybe for the next hour. And I would kind of swap, kind of go back and forth between those two. Where composing is really fun. Like if I just come up with a simple idea, and I just kind of start messing around, improvising, eventually something will come. This is training the composing muscle. And oftentimes what I would do with the technique muscle, I would kind of go over the scales, which I know a lot of people hate to do. But I still love scales, especially when you're doing sequences. It just trains your fingers to do more things, right? Like those sort of scale runs have been a blessing because like I get asked to do session work for some guitar players and stuff like that, and knowing this stuff, it's just going to make your lines more musical and also extend your lines. There's something called Hexitonic Scales, which is like playing 7 notes as opposed to 7, 8, and you kind of repeat those lines in different positions, like which is basically 7 notes, 7 notes, 7 notes in those 3 different positions. Really fun to do. Again, it forces you to learn the fretboard as well. That's one kind of the ethic that I'm looking at that I kind of remember doing. Nowadays, I'm more just arranging and composing. I don't feel that I'm exploring a lot of different techniques today. Not saying that I know all the techniques by any means, but it's just I feel like I'm working the composing muscle a lot more. I'm trying to convey a message with my music. That is the most important thing for me, is trying to communicate with you guys listening here today. So it's not just a flash show. I'm not trying to impress you with technique. The technique should be secondary to the overall message or the expression of the song. And where I see a lot of guitar players do this quite the opposite. They try to get the flash first, the wow factor, and then before 2 minutes you realize that there's no music in that. So I'm really trying to learn the musicality of this instrument and how to express myself through that. So that's a lot of my techniques, my songs. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. You tuned in here. A lot of you worked, not worked, but well, maybe you did work while you're watching this. But if you're at home, I just want to reiterate, social distancing, stay safe, wash your hands, take your time with everything. Hopefully play guitar, learn guitar. This is the best time to be playing guitar, right? I couldn't be more happy right now to see a lot of my students play more guitar than they ever have. So hopefully that applies to you as well. If not, no worries. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll see you hopefully at my website or YouTube channel, manelijamal.com or youtube.com/Maneli. See you there, guys. Peace.
Hey everyone, this is Jeff from jamplay.com, and I just wanted to thank you very much for attending this session. There's many more to come. With everybody working from home and all the musicians looking for gigs to play, we're going to try to bring you as many concerts as we can. I want to remind you of two really awesome things. The first is we are partners with TrueFire now, brother and sister. And so if you go to truefire.com/live, you're going to notice that they're going to have a bunch of upcoming live events as well. And the second thing I wanted to remind you of is it looks like we've extended the spring sale for another week, so if you want to get a membership, now is a great time. So thank you so much for tuning in. As Maneli said, check out his website for all his music and his lessons. And be sure to check out our course, which is on jamplay.com. It's called Progressive Fingerstyle Guitar, and it's taught by I am just learning to speak. It's taught by Maneli Jamal, and I think it has 30-some lessons, very detailed, great resource to start playing fingerstyle. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in.